can upload 10-minute TikToks now. Let's have an education here. Take a ride with me. Take a seat, get a drink and a snack. I'm going to teach you about the fundamentals of survival. Surviving what? Pretty much anything. Now, it may be intimidating to some to look at some of these topics, but I assure you that it is in your nature as a human to do these things and to be able to survive. You see, while we may have gotten away from our nature, our survival instincts in modern society, it still exists within you. Now, when it comes to survival fundamentals, the most fundamental thing, of course, is the space you're going to survive in, so shelter. You know, a caveman needs to have their cave, and it needs to be secured, which means preferably it has to be as stealth as possible, because stealth is security. There's no amount of fortification possible to keep a determined enough person or persons from getting at something they perceive that they need, which is potentially your stuff or you. The best place to do this is underground. The reason for that is that the ground provides a lot of insulation from the issues that may be in the outside world, both people as well as environmental factors, things like temperature, hot and cold, which is always going to be a problem, but also things like the environment. If it's an emergency situation, some kinds of grid down situation where there may be chemical issues or radiation issues. If you're underground, it's a lot easier to maintain hot and cold, whatever you need. It's going to remain a constant temperature all the time. And if you live somewhere or happen to be located somewhere where you cannot achieve an underground structure, then your best case scenario is to take an above ground structure, picture a shipping container, doesn't have to be one, cover it in dirt like a hill. Plant some trees and shrubbery and stuff on your hill, let it go wild with bushes and stuff so it looks natural, and there you go, you're underground, you're safe in somewhere like a Florida swamp, and you're not flooded out either because you're above ground. And it's going to provide you with a lot of insulation to help you control the temperature and keep the environment away from you. Next fundamental is water. You need a way to filter water. Things like life straws are really good, but more fundamentally, you need to understand the concepts behind filtration. Things like activated charcoal. How do you make that? You're going to want to burn some hard wood until you're able to grind it up into a powder. You're going to mix calcium chloride and water in a 3-to-1 ratio. Calcium chloride is a form of salt. It's what's in like ice melt and stuff. Just make sure it's pure calcium chloride. You could also use lemon juice or bleach. Again, make sure it's pure bleach, unscented. But mix that together with the charcoal powder you ground up. Let it all sit and stew and marinate, get to know each other for a day. Drain out the water, dry out the rest of it till it's a powder again. Mix that with layers of sand and gravel and fabric, and you can also use some air filter material. Filter your water through that. Then, of course, there's food, and the best thing to do there is to go ahead and stock up now. Buy canned food, buy dried goods. You can also learn to forage. Learn to identify dandelion and plantain, otherwise known as white man's foot. It's in a lot of yards all over the country. Now you got some stuff in a shelter. You need a way to protect all that, so you need to exercise your Second Amendment, know how to use that, understand how to make some traps. So in the previous section, we discussed shelter. Having a stealth shelter and all the things that you want to put in it and how to survive. In this section, I would like to discuss your personal shelter, your personal protective equipment. If the environment is somehow hostile to you, whatever that may be, whether that be from radiation, fallout, chemicals, heavy metals, big fires, smog, whatever, you should have systems and equipment in place to keep that stuff off of your body and out of your body. And the way to do that is basically to build a shelter around yourself that you can walk around.
Oh, you my mommy.
Let's talk about surviving the apocalypse. Namely, personal protective equipment, hazmat suit. Now, if I wanted to get everything off Amazon, I could, and so can you. If you go to prepzone.org and tap the prep list, it will open up your Amazon, and tap the nuclear category here. As far as gas masks go, there are a lot of different ones you can get. I kind of like this one. It has a little spot to get a drink from. Being able to get a drink without having to completely take off all your hazmat gear is good, but this stuff can get expensive because this can be one-time use depending on the environment you're using it to go into. Lots of different filters, they're all on here as well. If I wanted to go all out, I'm going to get one of these thermal radiation suits, okay? Just to start off, and then we're going to take off the visor, come through with the gas mask, maybe something more this style. You don't want anything exposed, so something like this is good, or you have to replicate it. You're going to want a bunch of trash bags anyway, so go ahead and pick up some of these. And you're going to need some of this anyway, so pick up some of this. Again, prepzone.org, tap the prep list, nuclear stuff, boom, boom. And you're going to need a way to get out of all of it, so I also threw some skizzers on there for you. You're also definitely going to want to have a dedicated Geiger counter, maybe some other kinds of sensors. There's lots of options on the prep list from prepzone.org. So I got to keep reminding you, because no matter how many times I remind you, people are going to ask in the comments, where's the links? But you want one with you outside so you can have one that is contaminated and then have one inside that's not contaminated, at least. Then you need a way to decontaminate. And all of this stuff may only be able to be used once, or you're going to have to decontaminate the stuff, and we'll talk about that later. But this is good. You know, you can drop it in a bucket and you get some water pressure there, and you're going to want to conserve water conceivably too. And the water that you're using in the ground or wherever you do it at is going to be contaminated. Also, don't use conditioner or anything that locks the stuff that's on you into your hair or your skin, because that stuff is radioactive. The main thing is start with just water. Just use a bunch of water and that's going to do a lot for you. But really start by not getting contaminated in the first place. Okay, so a layer like this, all right, plastic basically, some kind of gas mask, and then a seal between the gas mask and everywhere else so your hair and your skin is completely covered. And under here you'll have like surgical gloves, maybe rubber gloves, and then also these mittens as well. And again, that visor will be cut out and your gas mask will be poking out of there. And if you splurge, you can take a little sip of your Kool-Aid or whiskey or whatever floats your boat. But again, that stuff's to be used as a last resort, and you're not going to be able to move very effectively in it, but you will be fairly safe in it. And you need to be very careful when getting out of it. That's really important, and a lot of people don't think about that, and decontaminating. And remember, every trip out, it's one way, and it's one use for most of that stuff. So use it sparingly. It's expensive, and it's by necessity has to be disposable as well. Depending on the level of environment you're going into. It's useful in environments that are not as hazardous and you can scale it back. Also, it's going to be quite warm and toasty in there, so if it's nuclear winter or just very cold, that's a benefit to you. And being fire resistant doesn't hurt either, but you'll be slow. Really shaking up your stats here in the whole RPG of the apocalypse. And at any point, if you're out and you're needing to wear stuff like this, and because you're having to go out in the world, that means other people are also going to be hostile towards you. So you're going to want to be stealthy, because if you ever wear one of these, you're going to know it's not that easy to win a fight when you're looking through these little portholes and hardly able to breathe. Additionally, the fact that also makes you less able to see your surroundings and able to be effective in combat and self-defense. Stuff like that, the Mylar material, which you might need in like super cold nuclear winter situation, that could give you away with the sound alone. If you go to my prep list on prepzone.org, you can get full body like hazmat suits basically. The suits themselves are not that expensive. They're fairly durable, but not for like too much rough and tumble. So I'm about to tell you kind of how to use this stuff and what kind of general setup you need, but by all means take this away from this little TED Talk here. You don't want to have to use this stuff. If you do, it needs to be a last resort, and you need to understand it's very high risk. It's better just to have a secure place to hunker down, already prepared, full of supplies or whatever you're going to need to ride out until the environment calms down a little bit, that you don't need to take so much risk when you wear PPE like that. But if a grid down, shit hits the fan situation happens and you do need to go outside, for as brief a period as possible, by the way, you're going to want to have, like I said, those Tyvek, DuPont, full body suits. The yellowy ones are good. You can get the white ones that are more like a paper fabric kind of material. They should all be pretty impermeable, but the kind of more plasticky ones are going to be better. And by all means, having a couple layers are really, really good things to think about, because like you can also wear gloves like these as a base layer, but then you want a thicker rubber glove, and then you also want to duct tape all the way around. Now, if you do need to worry about things getting torn and stuff and snagged on things, wrap all of it in duct tape to give it almost like armor. Keep an electric razor around to trim up everything really quickly when you need to wear one of these first. It'll take you a minute or two to do. You can keep a beard for now. Rubber, knee-high boots, multiple pairs. These are disposable. All this stuff is one-time use. Have a decontamination shower set up. No conditioner. Get your supplies at prepzone.org.